we have Michael.
Hi.
I know Ms. McAwesome, but
Thank you.
McKillicuddy. All right. And I'm going to steal a chair from here because I'm going to sit down with you guys. Different ideas, so I thought it would be good. So you've been in the game. You've been at the summit every year, right?
Yeah.
This is your third year. So we talked about Bitcoin the first time. I always try to add at least one cryptocurrency. And if people had bought cryptocurrency in 2016 when we were talking about it, instead of everyone was laughing about it, but if you had bought when we were talking about it 2 years ago, you'd be
and it
thinking
really
us.
feels like each of these sessions is a decade ago.
Yeah, right. It's been 3 years, but it feels like 30 years. Yeah.
Just remembering what kind of topics we talked about last year, there was still much. For example, ICOs wouldn't come up at all.
Yeah, we didn't even have ICO.
And suddenly, that seems to be all that happened in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting and weird phenomenon.
Great. Okay.
Tons of money being raised for things that are mere ideas, for which there's no code, no product, no users, and where does that money come from? Certain that security laws and regulation prevents or disincentivizes a ton of investment. That doesn't mean it's a good idea to put your money into an ICO.
Okay. We were thinking about doing a GFA ICO, making a GFA coin or something. But
Right.
so Leo, how do you? I don't even know how to introduce you anymore. I mean, you travel around the world and talk about cryptocurrencies. Is that the right thing?
We started the meetup group in Hong Kong in 2012, and most of our goals have been to bring the industry together. That includes entrepreneurs and coders, that includes traders, increasingly increases traditional financial institutions, and they all have some kind of interest in cryptocurrencies. The last 12 months it has mostly been raising funds or turning existing money pools into regulated and sort of public-facing funds. There's lots of trends in there. My role would mostly be, these days, community work, turning the Bitcoin Association into more of a professional industry representation.
Great. And then Mike, you want to give us some background?
Please, yeah.
Hi everybody, my name's Michael McGillicuddy. I grew up in Phoenix, and Leonhard actually, he helped me buy my first Bitcoin. I told him my plan, and he gave me the go-ahead, which gave me the push to get rolling on it. I published the Bitcoin and Ethereum Startup Guide on Amazon. I wrote the book teaching people how to get started using that. I also had Bitcoin startup parties to, in a fun way, get people using cryptocurrency. And for me, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency represents freedom. Because I don't know if you know it or not, but the current condition for humanity is one of slavery. We are under control in many, many ways, and cryptocurrency is a way out of that. It's not perfect, and it's not the only thing that needs to be done, but it's a step in the right direction. Because I believe we should all be free. And that's why I threw my support behind it, and that's why I try and teach people about it as often as I can. But it's just a tool, and it's the consciousness of all of us which will determine which direction it goes in. So that's me.
Very cool. All right. So let's.
Thank you.
Some great people. Maybe we should get an idea of the level in the room. How many people?
Who has cryptocurrency?
Does anybody have?
Wow.
Who doesn't but wish that they did? Okay, that's fine.
Who sold too early?
Damn
Damn it! I'm still mad about that. I guess I can't keep looking back. I was holding in 2016, and I sold it. I already had going. Police running in here arresting people. Is this okay to talk about here?
So the legal question is very difficult, but in reality there are very, very few cases of the police actually having actually reached out to users, investors. There was a case recently in Shanghai where the police came into a conference, but that was more related to a dispute in who owed who how much money, and had actually no direct relation to cryptocurrencies, and did not result in the conference being shut down. If you run a cryptocurrency exchange, you probably would expect the most trouble right now, but the cryptocurrency exchanges that used to operate out of China, they still have their offices, they still have their staff. They no longer accept renminbi. They now claim to be in Hong Kong, or they claim to be in Korea, or the BVI or Seychelles. But how much really did fundamentally change? It's still very easy and seems to be quite safe to acquire Bitcoin in all amounts, no matter if it's 1,000 renminbi or 1 million. It still seems relatively easy to trade those, and at least we're not aware of any systematic enforcement action against Bitcoin traders, or against people raising money, or against people advocating these things.
Mike, anything there?
Not really.
So are there, but I still don't see the use case. Like, this is e-commerce summit. I always talked, like 2 years ago, we were talking about it, and I was hoping it could be used. Are people still, it's a user? Are we adding to Shopify? Even Stripe took it away, right?
Stripe changed its sales integration. They more want to be now enabling. They want to enable people to more easily buy it, rather than enabling merchants to more easily accept it. I think that has to do with who has their existing apps versus who their existing merchants are. I think if you are primarily selling to people who, for example, to a mass market, to people who do live in countries where payment problems aren't the most common, then enabling Bitcoin payments might be a nice gimmick, but it's not something that you would expect to raise your sales significantly, or not something where you would expect to lower your payment processing costs significantly. I don't think we're not quite there yet. I do think it is going to happen. Bitcoin is going to quite dramatically change until then. The user experience making a Bitcoin payment today is going to be quite different from the one that we're going to use in let's say around 2 years to buy things online. But that doesn't mean that Bitcoin doesn't have a use case right now in international businesses. I just think that Bitcoin payments today are still, so if you try to automate it and try to bring Bitcoin to a public-facing interface, like in Shopify, like it is possible, but often not justified. But at least from the people that come to me with their problems and that want to understand how they can safely make use of Bitcoin, they would be approached by a supplier who has trouble paying them, or they would be in affiliate marketing. It's become very, very common that the marketing companies, so you might have affiliate marketing networks that try to help you sell, let's say drones or electronic toys to the US and European market, and the European and US users might not really find it very convenient to buy your drones with Bitcoin, or Amazon might not offer that implementation, so it might not be convenient for you. But your affiliate marketing partner might sit in Lebanon or in Kenya or in South America, and they might have significant problems getting paid and receiving your PayPal transfers and turning your PayPal transfers into cash and paying for whatever costs that they have. And we more see Bitcoin taking off in those kind of payments. So payments that are either very high risk or are made into countries that are a little bit excluded from our financial system. And it's usually payments that are relatively large in size and that are handled manually. Where really there's the kind of payments where you make one payment per month to so a single market.
I think I'm summarizing it as B2B more than B2C.
Yeah.
So like paying your suppliers or payments rather than shopping cart integration with the consumer.
Yeah. That's how it's happening right now. I do think it's going to change. But
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Since the engineered financial crash in 2008, central banks have created trillions of new currency units, and the effects of that have not yet been felt. But, as they say in Game of Thrones, winter is coming. Inflation is coming in a big, big way. So, if you keep your money in fiat currency, meaning any dollars, euros, renminbi, any money that can be printed or created out of nothing, you're going to lose big time if you keep all of your money in that. Every single fiat currency throughout history has gone to zero. Every single one. And they will never tell you that on the news, and they will never tell you about that being a risk. They'll talk all about, oh, Bitcoin's very risky, the price is very volatile, blah, 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 right? Like that, which is true, but they'll never say, but compared to fiat currency, it has the power to at least keep its purchasing power because there's a limited supply. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying that it's everything, that you could ever want. However, it does make international business a lot easier. You get around, I don't know, somebody's telling me 33% using PayPal. There's crazy fees. I'm not an international business, so I don't know exactly the fees. However, international business is a lot easier, and you're going to protect yourself from the coming inflation.
I see. He's very passionate about that. That's why
It doesn't even need to be this dramatic. I have been stuck without access to my online banking for a few days for the most ridiculous reasons, or I've had like my card not working. And even though it was not always convenient to get around those things with Bitcoin, I have been in the situation where I was in foreign countries, my card wasn't working, and then it is not always super easy to find somebody nearby who can sell you local cash for Bitcoin, but it's by far easier than all the other options that I had, including being stuck for hours in waiting in the bank's hotlines.
I remember, Leo, you said once, I think we were just talking casually, you said I could be dropped out of an airplane. I don't know if you said naked or not, but with nothing into like the desert, and all I have to do is remember my Bitcoin 16-word password, and I can get my money.
Yeah, I have to somehow borrow a computer. But yeah, it could be a fun TV show, right?
Yeah. Where's Waldo? He just pops up.
Dropping people to random locations in the world with only Bitcoin in their head.
If people have questions, I want this to be interactive. This afternoon, I know we had lunch, everybody might, but I want this to be engaging. So I have a list just in case everybody's super shy, but I do want questions. Okay, Phil?
Is it reasonable, or how can I pay Chinese suppliers with Bitcoin or crypto?
So you either need to they need to accept it themselves, or you need to have a local partner who accepts the Bitcoin for you and then makes sort of a wire transfer. And those people still exist. They used to have public-facing services. Those public-facing services are usually no longer advertising, so it's become a lot more difficult to find people who are willing to make these wire transfers on essentially your behalf. But because China still has like much more loose surveillance on their domestic wire transfer systems than, for example, like and rules than many other countries have, it actually is. As long as they have some kind of knowledge of what these payments are for example, through invoices or through having, gained your personal trust, then it is still relatively low risk for them, and people still do it and offer this, and now it's just harder to find them.
I have other feedback. Some of them, you might not even know it's using Bitcoin, but it is. I don't know if Sendwire came down or not, but they were sponsored a couple of years ago, Remitsi. They were more publicly saying they use Bitcoin to pay Chinese suppliers. They merged with a company called Sendwire, but they still, I believe, use the blockchain and or Bitcoin cryptocurrency to settle in the middle of the payments between China and the US. So, and there's another person in our community, Simon from Aurelia Pay. He should be around, maybe he's here tomorrow, but he uses a lot of it for settlement. But you as a user, typing in your web in a computer, you don't know you're paying your Chinese supplier. But there's more and more of these service providers that do cross-border payments. They're actually using blockchain and crypto to settle in the middle. So you might not even know you might be doing it now without knowing it. Even banks. I don't know if banks use crypto, but they are using more and more blockchain. We have a question here, but I also do want to talk about blockchain as well.
That was more so a comment, but
Okay, sure.
I just wanted to say I noticed before you were talking about Shopify and about crypto integration. I wanted to tell you there is actually a way to integrate BitPay merchant payment solution into your Shopify store.
Cool.
It's very easy. You just go to BitPay, you request an API key, and then you just copy paste it. But again, it won't drive your sales or anything. You're only appealing to a very limited demographic that way. I just wanted to say
No, I
that.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Because I have a Shopify store, so.
Yeah, maybe I don't want to maybe I had to make a mistake, but I know what I meant was Stripe. Stripe, at least I think, cut off their connection to
Yeah,
Bit-
Stripe
Bit-
did.
That was maybe I know I was talking about Shopify at the same time, but I meant Stripe cut off. You used to be able to integrate Bitcoin with Stripe payments.
I know, I just wanted to shoot something
Yeah.
helpful out there.
I agree. I mean, but I think sometimes it depends on who you're selling to. So you're targeting tech geeks like these two, or maybe even me. I think sometimes cool. And I bought stuff sometimes online just because I wanted to use Bitcoin before I sold all of it, but too early. But,
Shopify WooCommerce is a couple of sites. It works really great. I'm also using that. I'm selling exclusively for Bitcoin, so yeah, I admit I don't have too many customers every month, but people do use it. It's almost these SIM cards.
so when the world ends, Michael, or the government changes.
Yeah.
So do you want to share a little bit about what you kind of mentioned it, but do we want to get into this conversation of the,
Do they?
or do you guys want to hear
What do
this?
they want to hear?
How do you get that cool sweater?
Oh.
Maybe you should make a disclaimer.
Give them point one.
Easiest probably to get it printed yourself to get to wherever is your local printer. I just had to print it myself. I just went to a printing company and said, please put some, oh nice, that's great.
Okay, we have a question.
Okay, so most people I know in Europe or around my community, they use Bitcoin. The motive is to buy something illegal.
Yeah.
You know, so how can you control this if there's no monitor one day that we all use Bitcoins and there's no monitor for any transactions?
So as not your lawyer, I would tell you to never sell illegal stuff for Bitcoin. Never buy illegal stuff for Bitcoin, and then you'll be fine, right? It doesn't matter too much what other people do with their lives. But yeah, Bitcoin. So illegal can mean many different things too. For most of it, it really has to do with like a mutual exchange between two consenting parties, and sometimes, yeah, somebody objects to that exchange. I think Bitcoin has been proven to be resilient. Like the reason why we're excited about Bitcoin is because it's not controlled by anybody. There's nobody who can turn it off. Nobody knows how to turn off this experiment, which is quite fascinating. And it's not something that can easily be regulated. And I think it has to have these properties. That also makes it so easy to send money to Pakistan or Lebanon or Kenya. Because the reason why you cannot easily do this with PayPal maybe is because a regulator goes to PayPal and says, if you do the following transfers, you have to implement all these restrictions. And these restrictions make it so difficult to run a business and often make it so expensive that we are not able to sell to certain places. And if you are in certain countries, you're not able to start an internet startup because you have no way of receiving payments. I think that's more of a feature. I think the only real problem that I've seen in the last few years regarding Bitcoin payments is that it's become a lot easier to extort people online, especially ransomware. So I would say ransomware is an example of illegal activity that has probably increased a lot more with Bitcoin. I think when it comes to drugs, then probably
Weapons.
online payments. Yeah, I don't know if weapons are that easy to ship in the mail.
On the darknet, because my friend showed me that what you can buy from the darknet is unbelievable. I think, for example, in Germany, you can buy and sell Bitcoins, but when it's above certain amount, you still need to prove your ID. So maybe one day, if Bitcoin really replaces the currency, which I think it could be good, but somebody has to also control it.
And who controls the somebody that
Yeah.
control it?
I don't know. That's why I have this question.
That's
It's
the
like
question.
an egg and chicken thing. So.
But I mean, the internet was started out porn. I still think how much percent of
Porn
the
is
internet
fine,
now
I
is
think.
like porn?
Yes.
It's for real though. I mean,
It
internet
was the
started
porn
out-
call.
Also, our perception of these things changed a lot. When the internet came up, you mentioned porn as an example. It was considered the biggest problem with the internet. Like, how can you allow a computer to be in a school? How can you allow a library to get an internet connection when the internet is like just so full of bad things? We're gonna look at Bitcoin quite similarly, except that maybe in the US it's already happening, and maybe in the rest of the world too. In 10 or 20 years, we're just gonna accept that people are trading drugs over the internet, and we're just gonna accept that as a legitimate way to spend your weekends. In the same way that we now say, well, like there are my teenage boys locked in their room with their computer. Who knows what they're doing?
Well, right now people use a mostly non-traceable currency to buy drugs anyways.
Monero has
Cash.
gotten quite a lot of
Cash.
Yeah,
Use
cash.
paper to buy drugs and weapons and it works.
But buying it online is a lot safer. Quality-wise, and you don't get shot. No, it's a real problem. It's not so much applicable to here.
Drug dealer 101.
Yeah, don't get shot.
I have an answer too. That type of problem of people buying these horrible things using cryptocurrency is not cryptocurrency itself, it's the level of consciousness that these people are at. And so trying to control externally cryptocurrency is a band-aid solution at best. These people will find another way if they're intent on hurting themselves or hurting other people. So, taking the easy way out towards external control will only lead to more chaos. The answer is for people to control themselves internally. And that comes, in my opinion, from natural law. Understanding truly what is right, what is wrong, why it is right, why it is wrong, which you will never find in a government school or in really any religion today. That's what I think.
In the same vein, I guess it's not really about knowing or having a regulation. I heard there are about 1,000 crypto, but it's not really knowing but just avoiding being scammed. Or someone told us that, there's this guy who came to the Philippines and saying that there are only about 12 that are legal. I don't know if this is for real. Out of 1,000, there are only 12 or thereabouts. And can at least someone say, what are the non-scam?
Currency.
I can definitely say Bitcoin is not a scam, but at the same time, I do think most of cryptocurrencies are scams. I think it can be very difficult to judge. Often you can only tell by kind of how the organization involved around this currency is kind of behaving, and you see that a lot of cryptocurrencies do have like an organization around them that professionally markets these things and professionally sells them. If you do have knowledge about computer science, then it's maybe it's a little bit easier to look into exactly the code and look into exactly of whether a cryptocurrency is really decentralized and really cannot be controlled, because most of the ones that are scams are usually not. But it is probably a lot more of a problem around scams currently in cryptocurrencies. Everybody wants to raise money, everybody comes out of nowhere pretending they're cryptocurrency experts. And investments do have to be made very, very carefully. So I would not recommend you to put your savings into this, even Bitcoin. I would recommend you to create new savings to see how much money you can put away every month, and that you can really afford to lose, like money that you would have otherwise spent at expensive drinks or luxury travel. That you can say, okay, so this is now live a bit more frugally and put that into some cryptocurrency. I personally only own Bitcoin. That also has to do with that I've seen how the group around it behaves, that there's really nobody in control of it, that nobody owns like a significant large amount of money. And what's also always important for me is that these bitcoins never was a single bitcoin created out of nowhere. Each bitcoin had to be mined. Each bitcoin had to first be created using by destroying electricity. And even the first 50 bitcoins that are in the Genesis block that Satoshi did create out of nowhere, even those bitcoins are unspendable. So even the 50 bitcoins that have theoretically been created out of nowhere, they cannot be spent. And for a lot of these scams, nobody was really able to enrich themselves with Bitcoin through creating them. Maybe some miners may have been lucky speculating on the difficulty and the price increases, but that's really no difficult than buyers speculating on the price increases. If you mined Bitcoin in 2010, then yes, maybe you are rich now, but only if you had kept them. In 2010, it was not profitable to mine Bitcoin at all. You would run your computer all day, and at the end of the day, you had like 2 Bitcoins, which were worth like 40 US cents, and you had spent electricity pretty much equal to that. I think that's quite an important indicator compared to all these cryptocurrencies that are created out of nowhere, where some founders award themselves half the supply and then go around funding professional marketing agencies to host. There was a party 2 weeks ago at the Ritz-Carlton in Hong Kong for one of these cryptocurrencies. They spent $1 million Hong Kong dollars just getting everybody drunk and fed. And I think that's more of an indication that maybe they did create money out of nowhere, and they are now professionally pumping it.
I would say this, Andy. Trust yourself, learning what is correct and what is not correct, what's a good one, what's not a good one. Don't look for a third party, an outside person to keep you safe, because that will never happen. Nobody cares about you as much as you yourself, and you have the power and ability to learn anything you want as long as you apply yourself. Secondly, I would say I would not trust in Bitcoin at this moment. Right now, the Bitcoin code is owned by a company called Blockstream, which itself is owned by the AXA Insurance Group from France, who themselves are owned by the Bilderberg Group. And if you don't know who those people are and what impact they have and the destruction that they cause around the world, you're behind. And so I personally do not use Bitcoin anymore because it's been compromised, it's been taken over. It was a beautiful vision, and they realized that, and rather than attack it head on, which would cause a reaction against them, they went through the back door and neutralized it, neutered it, I would say is a better word. And if you want to know more, join the roundtable.
I think people, and anybody owns the Bitcoin code, it does say that Satoshi did write in his first license agreement, this is free to use for anybody and this is open source, and if you don't trust it, then it's always best to verify for yourself and to run the code for yourself, and then you're gonna quickly find out if somebody knocks on your door and tears everything down because you've been defying their authoritarian rule. But maybe as practical advice, it is quite useful to everything that you invest in, first try to use it for yourself and see, does this even work? Are there wallets? Is it easy to run this on a computer? Does the program immediately crash? Then try to make a transaction, see if it really works. Because most of these tokens, I think, especially the ones that are very much hyped, they're pretty much useless, and we don't find out because people are just buying them on exchanges, they're never even withdrawing them. And then you have to find out for yourself, like, did this work? What kind of bugs did I encounter? And then if it does, then maybe it also makes sense for you. And if all these things are true, if you find something that works, and that you have a good experience with, and something that you can imagine to fit into your world and sometime be useful for really just for you, not for some abstract third party that you imagine, but really, is this useful for you? Then, yeah, might be worth it to put some savings into this.
Okay. I didn't expect it to be so popular. Thank you everybody for coming to this session. They're both going to have their own roundtables to wrap up today. So if you're interested to engage more with them, they're very happy to talk.